this is the helicopter 5. It is manufactured by Harbin Manufacturing Aircraft Corporation and is intimated. And we just because on the primary appearance, the appearance of our aviation history, we have no skill. The savant, he help us a lot in aviation. This is Pakistan. We cooperate with Pakistan. This one is also now he is accessories to Pakistan. And this blue one and the blue one and the white one, it is missile. It used to destroy distract the target on the run.
Last generation of planes in Air Force military. But nowadays, such as this year, the China will hold a ceremony at the anti-fascist. You know fascist?
We're not going back this way. We will get around in that way. So if you want to take a photo with the
Офигеть, просто навижу.
没有，快船。去哪里呀
Предлагаю очень покладное взять. О, 9. Мужик, 9. Волгоград стоит прям перед нами.没什么顺手的事儿，到时候还一个找对象，就该自己个人认定了。Have a nice trip. Oh, thank you. 我也经常回南京玩啊，记得叫我。
请到以后去北京给我发消息啊。
OK，我回北京去，我回去北京。He worked in Beijing, and the next time when you arrive in Beijing, just like a dream.
Не помню, я в Японии покупал.
Без красивый самолет.
4.
Где там эстетика стримлайна?
Мне кажется, ее чуть-чуть заруинится. Зарядка сил. Я бы уже давно снял.
Только уходит.
谢谢，68。
女士们、先生们，本次航班为您提供机上升舱服务，如需办理，请联系客舱乘务员。谢谢。
Ladies and gentlemen, upgrade service is available on this flight. If you would like to upgrade, please contact the cabin crew. Thank you.
女士们、先生们，中国南方航空欢迎您，座位号码位于行李架边缘，请您对号入座。摆放行李时，请您侧下身，以方便后面旅客的通过。请留意水杯、雨伞、背包等物品的摆放，以免掉落。由于本次航班旅客较多，大件行李请优先放在行李架上，背包及小件物品请您放在前方座椅下。为了安全起见，机上禁止使用充电宝为电子设备充电，禁止为充电宝充电。请勿将充电宝存放在行李架内，请您放置于座椅前方的口袋中或随身携带的手提包内，谢谢。Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to China Southern Airlines. Please take your seat of the number indicated has been. Please come and have another seat front of you for the convenience of the others. This is not clear. Thank you for your cooperation.
谢谢。
inflation temps while exiting the aircraft. 充气不足时，将救生衣充气管拉出，用嘴向里吹气。Use the mouth tubes when normal inflation is not sufficient. 紧急情况下，客舱通道指示灯和出口指示灯会自动亮，指引您从紧急出口撤离。In case of emergency, track light and exit indications will automatically illuminate to point you to the emergency exit. 请确认离您最近的出口。Please locate the exit nearest to you. 撤离前，取下随身携带的尖锐物品。Before evacuation, please take off the sharp objects. 撤离时，听从机组指挥，不要带行李。Please follow the instructions of the crew and leave your luggage on board. 撤离后，尽快远离飞机。Move quickly away from the aircraft after evacuation. 安全须知在您前方座椅的口袋里，请尽早取阅。The safety instruction card explains your seatbelt. Please read it when you roll it. 现在，请您调直座椅靠背。Please adjust your seatbelt to a fully upright position. 扣好安全带。Fasten your seatbelt. 收起小桌板。Lock your tray table. 收起座椅脚踏板。Still movement rest. 为了飞行安全，我们将统一调整舷窗的亮度。For the flight safety, we'll adjust the dimmable window. 我们特别提醒您，在调整座椅靠背、收放小桌板及脚踏板前，请妥善保管手机等电子设备。Please take care of your electronic devices before adjusting your seatbelt tray table and footrest. 如电子设备不慎滑入座椅缝隙 ，If your devices accidentally slide into your seat slot. 不要调节座椅，请呼叫乘务员前来处理。Please contact our flight attendants for help and do not adjust your seat.
我是本次航班安保组长 ，I'm the chief security of the flight. 根据中国相关法律规定 ，according to the laws of People's Republic China， 损坏机上设备、扰乱客舱秩序等机闹行为涉嫌违法，将被因视频裁提记录。
们的飞机很快就要起飞了，请您再次确认安全带已经系好，手机等电子设备设置为飞行模式或关机。谢谢。Ladies and gentlemen, as we are about to depart, please make your seatbelts fully fastened and your devices are in flight mode powered on. Thank you. 备设置为飞行模式后关机期限。客舱乘务员请合作座位。Ladies and gentlemen, our aircraft operating shortly. Please make sure to fasten your fasten and the devices are invisible and powered off. Thank you. Cabin crew, please remember for landing.
拜。
拜拜，下次见啦。
上11点16分，机舱外面的温度为20摄氏度，68华氏度。飞机还在滑行，在系好安全带。Aircraft is still taxiing. Please keep your seatbelt fastened and do not open the overhead bins until the fasten seatbelt sign is turned off. After the aircraft has completely stopped at the parking area, please take care when